Let's look at some of the capabilities that are available during our evaluation. We'll open our client folder, and here we can see the two evaluations we created earlier. We can go to the Evaluations tab to see all of the evaluations, which obviously sums up to 2. And let's open this one. So we have a couple new tabs because we saved and closed this evaluation. Anything we do to this evaluation now is automatically saved. We don't have to save anymore. We see that we have the Muscle Master as the template that we're using. Again, this is the list of templates that we have available. When you subscribe as an apprentice, you have the Muscle Master template and the Nutrition Provider template. This tells me what has been selected, this column. This is the column I use to select what I want to use. So I could switch this Muscle Master template to any of the ones that I have available. But for now, we'll just leave it to Muscle Master. Pull points is, it'll pick highs and lows. And what do I mean by highs and lows? You see this gray area? This is kind of the normal range. Anything that goes above it is out of the normal range, and if it goes beyond this little white region by this gray line, these are even more out. So the furthest out are more significantly anomalous than things that are inside the gray area. So for example, if I have the computer pull points for me, it'll select all of the highs and lows up to 24 points. So we have now, these points are represented by the red dots. These are the ones that the computer pulled. It pulled a good collection of the lowest points, and it clustered a few in this area, and it's now showing me what points are pulled. Notice the color pattern of these dots. Some are just red, and some have an aqua ring around them. Look at the flags in this area and down below when I'm moving my mouse. See how the numbers change? This is point 443, and the one in the left column over here is saying that I have 24 points pulled. If I go over one of these dots, this is point 244, it doesn't have any information next to it. But let's go to the one over here. It says this is point 206, and it has 3 hits. The hits are referring to the template that I'm using. So since I'm using Muscle Master, in its view of the master matrix, this point has 3 hits. And if you see a larger ring like this one, it probably has more. It has 6 hits. So some have none at all because in regards to this particular template, this point isn't seen in this particular lens. So just for fun, let me show you another perspective on this. This pulled all the highs and lows up to 24 points. And it's looking through the lens Muscle Master. Just for fun, let's switch the lens to another template and see what happens to these dots when I do that. Let's move over to the template PTSD. Click OK. And watch these dots. Wow, a lot of stuff. That other template had 0. This one has 11. This one has a bunch too, has 12. So as you can see, depending on the lens, we get different information, even though our points haven't changed. So for example, since I want to look at muscles with this client, I'm going to go back to the muscles template so that I can focus in on any muscular issues. One option is to decide that I don't want points that have no hits in regards to muscles, because there's still a lot of points out there that I might want to select that are still highs. There's not so many lows, but there is a couple here I might want to select. And so let's say we want to remove the ones that have 0 hits and set a new collection of points so that we can see if these points are giving us information regarding our muscle adventure here a little bit. It's kind of hard to navigate around here. You kind of have to get in real close. Wouldn't it be nice if we could zoom? Well, we can. there are several ways to zoom in on these. First one is this area down here. You might see in the shadows kind of a pattern. This is reflecting what this wave file looks like. And these flags tell me the range that I'm seeing. Notice that I have an arrow and I go down here, it turns into the hand. If I left click and hold and drag this, I am now seeing points 50 to 300 on my view. So this is how I can zoom in. Another option for this, if I want to zoom in closer, I left click and hold one of the flags on the end of this and it zooms in even closer. And now I'm looking at just a handful of points. If I want to zoom out, I can take any one of these flags and pull it out and then slide through the wave file and see things from a fuller perspective. So that's one way we can zoom. Another way we can zoom is just by having our arrow in this general area and rolling your mouse wheel toward the monitor will zoom in, and pulling our wheel away from the monitor toward our wrist zooms out. Another option is to click and hold with the left mouse and drag the image horizontally so that I'm able to move through the wave file this way. So those are some options as far as how to zoom in. And now that we're zoomed in, let's remove these points. So this was selected by the computer and it has no hits using Muscle Master. So I'm going to left click on it and it turns it into a solid blue dot. So if I'm reselecting points, I realize that is one I already used. So let's delete this one as well. And delete this. There's kind of a point. Let's grab that one while we're here. This is kind of an open space, something to take notice of, so we'll select a point inside that region. Let's keep sliding through. I know that I still have another point because I deleted that other one. As you can see, it keeps a record over here of how many points I have. I have 24 points now, so if I want to add something, I'm going to have to delete something because I have a limit of 24. Also, it's required that I have 6 lows and 6 highs, and so the other remaining 12 points can be whichever I wish. So I have to be sure that while I'm doing this removing process of the low points, that I'm replacing them so that I have 6. This is kind of an interesting gap. Let's grab this low one right here and keep going on our way here. Ooh. Okay, yeah, see that one was selected and has a hit, or many actually. What does it have? 6. Okay, how are we doing on count? We have 24 points. Okay, here's a couple zeros, actually 3. So we'll grab that one. And when I see a big open space like this, that catches my eye, so I'm going to select that one. And we'll just catch that one. It's kind of pretty close to the gray zone, but it also quite a large gap up in here, so that might be interesting. We got 23 points. Here's our 24th. Keep dragging, see what else we got. Okay, that's got something, and this doesn't. We're going to focus on muscles on this. And so I'm going to select points that help me see muscle issues. Now, I got to be sure that I have 6 low points. So I'm going to wheel out by pulling my mouse wheel toward my wrist. And how many do I have on the bottom? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so I'm good. I've got my 6 lows and the rest obviously are highs. We got 23 points. I have room for one more point, and I find this area kind of interesting, how we've got that spike down and then some ups. So let's zoom in here. This is 731. Another option for me is to pull this in like this and then look at the numbers on the very bottom and say, okay, I've got 731 in my range here. 731, and let's grab that one. All right, I got 24 points, and now the next step is to update the GNS. And the GNS stands for Genesis. These are the collection of 24 points that we use for our analysis. So after editing this and changing things, I have to update the GNS. Now the interesting thing is to see what happens with the display. We have three kinds of dots now. We've got the ones that were pulled and have stuff because they have the aqua ring. We have the blue ones that are showing me which ones I deleted. And then we have the new ones with the blue ring around the red dot. So let's watch what happens when I update the GNS with these new points. All right. Most everything I picked, I think practically everything I picked has something in it. These new points, for example, this little guy here has 3 hits, and I know this is one I picked, and it has 3 hits. So what we've done is we looked for anomalies in this wave file, by this visual rendition of the wave file, and things that are above and things that are below the gray are considered anomalous, and there are more subtle patterns we can develop skills to understand. And once we've selected these points, we're pretty much completed with this tab. This is just giving us a visual resource to select points. This area here is kind of interesting. It's something that kind of jumps up out of the path between these two sides. It would be worth picking something there. But just for this demonstration, let's just keep moving on. So we've pulled our points automatically. I've deleted things that had no hits, and then I replaced them with new points. And now I have a collection of points, 24 points, that all have information. Let's find out how to see this information. To do that, we click on the GNS tab. Now what this is showing us are the point numbers. And that refers to the fact that, for example, this point with 6 hits is point number 987. So if I go back to the GNS, 987 has 6 points. Why is it called lowest low? Well, if you look at these, it absolutely is your lowest low, which is more significant than a low. Because like I said earlier, the further away from the gray, the more anomalous it is. So here we have the list of points, and they are equivalent to notes, meaning that, for example, 440 is A, right? And its octave 880 is another A. The octave below 440, 220 is an A, just like on a piano. And there are those 12 names of scale degrees between octaves. So point 987 is in the B range, 1708 is in the G sharp range, and so that's what the notes are referring to. The tag just tells me if it was a high or a low or the lowest low. The hits refer to what template we're using. It's looking at the frequency matrix and coming back with information. So point 987 has 6 things from the frequency matrix based on the Muscle Master template that we're using. Now I can organize these a little bit. I can say I want the highest hits first, and that's what this arrow is telling me. If I right-click here, I see that I'm sorting by descending. I can clear the sorting, okay, and now it's going to go lowest to highest. So this point 277 has 1 hit. It's a C sharp. Let's say I want to do something different. Let's say I want to sort by note. So if I click here, the first lowest note letter is C. I have 1 C. It's point number 1061, and it has 2 hits based on the template that we're using. And we have 3 C sharps, and they're all different. If you take 277 and multiply it by 2, you'll find it gets very close to 579. And of course, this is also in the range of C sharp. And they all have one hit each. I've got 2 Ds. For a note is not just 440 for A, for example. It goes down to, let's say, 432 and up to maybe 450 something. So the range for that letter is broader than one specific point. Another thing I can do is I can sort by point. Let's click here and show you what happens. Notice how we have these colors on these rows of information. When something is in the red area, that means it's in the predictive range of the person's voice. And predictive is referring to they're having an issue, but it's something that hasn't completely manifested itself in their biosystem. Green is present, meaning it could be an acute issue or something that they're struggling with in the present tense. Blue is long term, so this would be more of the chronic type things that are occurring. The fact that this lowest low is in the long term means this is somewhat significant as far as our well-being and health, etc. So this is the GNS points window, and we find that we have 24 points here, but they sum up to 51, meaning it's reporting back from the frequency matrix the quantity of hits of those 24 points. And of course, if you take the fact that this point has 3 hits, that means when you add up all of these hits, there are 51 hits for muscle master. Over here is the note correlate information. And let me show you the parallels between these two windows. Counts refer to how many C's there are. So let's organize this by note again. And as you can see, I have 1 C, I have 3 C sharps, I have 2 D's, etc., etc. So this is counting the number of notes of those 24 points. And these are lined up in order. I can sort this by who has the most counts. For example, by clicking here, I have no D sharps, no A's. Click it again, it goes into descending. I've got 5 G sharps, 4 G's. So this is pretty significant as far as looking at the note correlate information. The third column is hits. So if I take my 5 G sharps, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and add up all of the matrix hits, that adds up to 12. G has 11, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 G's, and if I count 2, 3 is 5, 8, 11, and that is what this number represents. Notice the color coding. I have a G in the red or in the predictive area. I've got 2 G's in the present area, and I've got 1 G in the long term. So this 11 is summed up by things that are in predictive, things that are in present, and things that are in long term. So when you're looking at this information, as you become more familiar with what you're seeing and you understand the depth of what this information is telling you, you can see that things that are happening in the long term are more serious than things that are happening in the present, and things happening in the present are more serious than things that are happening in the predictive range. To look at this another way, we can click on hits and go to descending, and it shows us that information. It just so happens to be the same pattern that we used when we did the count sort. We can also say, well, let's just look at what's happening most with the long term. And B is long term. It has 7 hits, and I have 2 B's in my range, and one of them is my lowest low. So by looking at this information from this perspective, kind of gives us some ideas as far as where to look next. And after taking your technician training and learning more about what this information is telling you, you'll find how to utilize this resource more efficiently in the future. But for now, it's an opportunity to explore and discover this resource and how you can manipulate it. So when you go into the technician level, you're not going through a major learning curve with how to manage the portal. So we have this note correlate information, and a very popular report we want to give our clients is found here. So if I click here, I click on Note Correlate Chart. When I click that, it will generate a new window that shows us this Note Correlate Chart in a format that Sound Health has been using for many, many years. So once this is rendered, I can export this to my local computer, and this is something you can look at as far as what these notes mean. So remember, we found a few that had more than 4. That's kind of key. This G has 4, and G generally has to do with physical issues or depression. And as far as the physical component of G, it's neurotransmitters and utilization of minerals and bones. G sharp, which is even more pronounced as an issue, has to do with these emotional components and these physical components. So this note correlate chart is kind of a view of your client that is helpful for them to use as a resource. By clicking on this button, export a report and save it to the disk. So we'll click that button and we'll just save that. We can open the folder and open the note correlate chart if we wish by doing that. So that's one of the reports that I'll go over again when we get to the report generating process. But I just wanted to show you that now, that if I want to make a note correlate report, I click here and go to note correlate chart. That gives you a good start as far as what the GNS tab is capable of. One more thing that experiment with is, remember we did this whole process, we pulled points and then we deleted some and then we added new ones. You know, I'm kind of happy with this collection for Muscle Master. I don't necessarily want to change it, but I can, and I'll show you how. By going back to the GNS tab, if I use this box, it selects all of these points and I can delete all of those points. I don't have to select them all. Let's say I have things that are only one hit. Maybe I want to get rid of all the one hit things. I can select here all the ones that are one, and instead of like scrolling and looking, I'll just go like this. I'll click hits, and here we are. Got all my ones. So by selecting the ones that don't have enough hits for my taste, I can delete those GNS points. And I'll find that instead of having 24 points here, I'll have removed these 7, and so I can go back to the Wave tab and replace those with something else. And instead of just selecting individually, select everything with this box, I can delete the entire collection of GNS points. Let's go over to the Symptoms tab. Now this specific evaluation has to do with muscles, and so I can link a muscle complaint to this specific evaluation. And we did have that muscles attached to our client's folder, but now I'm attaching this to this evaluation. I want to see the relationship of these muscle symptoms. Oh, let's say she has muscle twitch and muscle weakness. And now I'm attaching these symptoms to this evaluation. So if I'm doing my nutrition evaluation, I might talk more about diet or allergies or things of that nature. But for now, what I've done is I've attached these muscle symptoms to my muscle evaluation using Muscle Master. And that's a way to format that. Of course, Memo is showing that I used the high-low. That's what this pull points thing did. And I went in and edited it. And so they're not strictly high and low because I've kind of made sure that everything on my Wave tab has an aqua ring around it, right? So it started with highs and lows, but I went in there and made it a little bit more informative, because if it has 0, then I'm not really getting much of a report. couple more options here is if I just want to dump the entire evaluation, I can delete it here. If I want to edit something, this will put me back to the page where I can rename the session. I can look at my memo and add some information. Let's see, we're focusing on muscle issues. And so I'm now in the edit mode using that pencil, and I'll save and close this. Go back to her evaluations or open this voice file, either way. And here we are. Has the information and the most recent update. That means I just worked on this and it's now the 29th. And so that's the process of looking at evaluations. The next step is to discover what this frequency hits tab does for us.